Robert Schumann grew up with a great love for poetry and literature. His father was a writer and bookseller. The young Schumann had access to a huge library where he read the works of the world's greatest authors. Schumann even learned to read Latin and Greek, and he also learned to speak French, English, and Italian. The young Schumann's literary favorites included the fantasy novel titled The Awkward Year by the author known as Jean Paul, and the strange and mysterious short stories by E.T.A. Hoffmann, the Edgar Allan Poe of his day. In his teens, Robert Schumann was torn between his love of words and his love of music. He loved the music of Bach and Beethoven, but he especially loved the music of Franz Schubert. Schumann also loved to improvise. He would play for hours at the piano. Those who heard his improvisations were astonished at the incredible music he could create spontaneously and effortlessly. But the young Robert Schumann, unlike great composers such as Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven, had received no musical training. There were no musicians in the Schumann family, and there were no music conservatories in Germany at that time. Schumann dreamed of becoming a professional musician, but how was he to accomplish this goal? Following the death of his father when Schumann was only 16, Schumann's mother pressured him to become a lawyer to secure his financial future, and she discouraged Schumann's musical dreams. At first, Schumann tried to please his mother by studying law. However, becoming a lawyer would never do for this intensely romantic and poetic soul. Schumann eventually informed his mother that he was quitting his law studies to become an artist and musician. He wanted to become a virtuoso, like his three genius contemporaries Mendelssohn, Chopin, and Liszt, who would become equally famous as virtuoso pianists and composers. But damage to Schumann's right hand forced him to concentrate only on composition. His dream of becoming a virtuoso pianist was shattered, causing him great suffering. However, those of us who love classical music must thank the forces of fate that led Schumann to his destiny as one of the greatest romantic composers, a composer with the fantastic imagination of a born poet. Schumann combined his great love of literature with his musical genius to invent new connections between the two art forms and to create wonderfully imaginative music for solo piano. Even the titles of these piano works are incredibly original. The titles suggest a completely new aesthetic, a new world of imagery and storytelling. Schumann composed Papillons when he was 20 years old. With this piano work, Schumann created a revolutionary and new type of composition for solo piano, a cycle of character pieces. Schumann described Papillons as the musical version of a masked ball. The dancers are masquerading in elaborate costumes. Many of the pieces are based on dances such as the waltz and the polonaise. It is interesting that in the early 1830s, Chopin was also composing solo piano pieces based on dance. In the Valse Brillante in E-flat major, Chopin turned the waltz into a brilliant virtuosic concert piece. However, when we hear Papillon, we realize that Schumann imagined a completely different role for this dance, transforming the waltz into a character piece. We find this transformation of the waltz in many of Schumann's compositions, beginning with his first published piano work, the Abegg Variations. This piece was the breakthrough composition that brought Schumann's name as a composer to the world. In the Abegg Variations, we see Schumann's love for musical code, turning the notes into a theme in waltz character. Notice the radically new way Schumann uses the marcato accent to create a tenuto rubato effect that changes the declamation and makes the regular phrase structure of the dance music much more interesting. Here and in all of Schumann's music, the careful attention to details is an essential part of interpreting this new piano language. Clara Schumann said that Robert's ideal is to hear his compositions played with exact, precise attention to all the details, especially the many accents. You could even say that in his scores, every single note and every expression mark has special meaning. In Papillon, the beautiful waltz passage in number 10 sounds like a preview of Tchaikovsky's ballet music. There are two magnificent waltzes in Schumann's great cycle called Carnival. Here is the Valse Noble. The other is the delightful Valse Allemand. In the David League dances, we hear this fantastic waltz marked impatiently. The last of the David League dances is a piece in waltz style, a lovely and touching ending to the cycle.